about channeling St. Francis. You know, St. Francis loved animals and cared for animals and very much believed in the sanctity of life. Tell us a little about channeling St. Francis.
Well, what I learned was, I started this path doing Reiki, and as I was working with the healing energy of Reiki, the mediumship came in, you know, people's family, friends, and animals, and shortly after that, I learned that what really deepened this desire to speak for animals was St. Francis and Archangel Gabriel. They told me that they were working with me to bring a higher awareness and consciousness and to show people who the animals are. And St. Francis showed me past lives where I witnessed some really horrific animal abuse. And I asked him, was I in the same life with you when you were St. Francis? And surprising to me, he said no, but we've had a lot of other lives together, and that we had, you know, both seen this kind of an animal abuse. And so this was our agreement to remind people that there was a time where we all spoke to animals and honored them and respected them. So, but St. Francis, there's several stories about St. Francis and the birds, and he was in a wealthy family and walked away from everything to live life according to his terms. He's most known for the story of the wolf. Do you remember that, Rich?
I do, but if you would tell it for our listeners again, I would like to hear it again.
Yeah. Well, this was some villagers had contacted him. They were very perplexed and fearful of this wolf. The wolf had been coming into their village, and there were all kinds of stories about how the wolf was going to eat them and destroy everything and taking the chickens and the animals away. And I think the stories just grew and grew. So St. Francis agreed to go and talk to the wolf. As he did, he made the sign of the cross and said a prayer and called on him. He said, "Brother Wolf, please come to me." And he made an agreement with him that the wolf would cause no harm to either the villagers or their animals in exchange for food. And after this communication, this wolf turned into a lamb and started walking side by side with St. Francis, following him around. The villagers were, amazed. They couldn't believe this scary monster that they had created from this wolf was this mild, meek lamb. And so every night from that time forward, the villagers would feed this wolf. They treated him with much respect, and he went door to door. And they did this for 2 years until he died, and at that time, they mourned him. So,
St. Francis communicated with animals, and so do you. And you're going to be soon teaching animal communication classes. Could you tell us a little about that?
Yes, I'm just starting teaching this year, in fact. I'm starting at some local bookstores in the Seattle area, and then in events in Seattle later, probably, we're looking at fall possibly, and then I will go to online classes. I would love to have as many people communicating with animals as possible, even if it's just to communicate with your pet at home, or just to understand who they are, to see them for who they are. If I have an online class, I'll let you know.
That would be fantastic. Darcy, you participated in some intuitive expos as well. Could you tell us a little about those?
Oh, you know what? Those expos they're so fun. I mean, we have so much laughter. People will come up and ask me all kinds of questions, and I always say I couldn't make these things up. One story that comes to mind is I had a family of 6. There were grandparents, parents, and kids asking me about various dogs and cats and then a goose. One of the stories about there are many stories, but one particular one about a dog was I said to the mom that there's a dog here that is telling me that that he did something very significant that changed the course of your life. And he said it was very, very important. And she kind of stopped and just looked at me. And I said, he keeps showing me your side, this right side. And anyway, the message continued. And then she told me that this dog had been pushing on her side, and she didn't think anything of it until like maybe the third time, where he was very insistent. And she knew in that moment that something was really wrong, and I need to go to the doctors right now. And she did. She ran in, and she, and I'm trying to remember what it was. She was ready to, I want to say ulcer, not an ulcer, but she was like one step away from having emergency surgery. And the dog was alerting her to this health issue. So that was unexpected. But the story of the goose was, they said, what happened to our goose? And this goose showed me that he was walking around, strutting, in fact, with his chest up high and his head held high. And he said that he was getting the rest of the geese, whipping them into shape. And he looked like General Patton, like this goose on a mission. And he was very strict. He was very hard on each of the geese, but he particularly was focusing on their flight and their formation, and that everybody had a role to play. And if one person wasn't, right on, it would affect everyone in the group. So he made them work really hard, and he was very highly respected. And then this went on for a while, and the family just howled in laughter because they said, that's exactly what he does. He just walks around strutting like he's, in charge and calling the shots, and it was just really his personality. And then one day he disappeared. And what he showed me was that it was the final inspection, and he had such a deep sense of pride in fulfilling his life purpose, and he knew that his work was done and it was time. So he said his farewells to the flock, and he walked off into the woods, and he announced that he was ready to go. And another agreement that had been made was that of the prey predator. And he said that he offered his body, and as soon as, I believe it looked like a wolf or a coyote, I'm not recalling exactly right now, he was out of his body before his death. But he was very proud of that life. He fulfilled his life purpose in a very big way. And like I said, so many things you can't anticipate.
Darcy, you have a website too, www.darcypariso.com. Could you tell us a little about the website?
Oh, sure. Well, on the website, I talk about a little bit about myself, about the mediumship, animal intuitive, and the Reiki healing, and I offer services that combine those. There's also I do intuitive readings and oracle card readings and different things too, but and my events are also posted. So the website talks about how I got into mediumship and also animal communication, has some referrals, and I'm thinking what else I could tell you about it.
In 2014, you attended the prestigious Arthur Finley College in England. Could you tell us a little about that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I was working in an office when all of this started, the healing energy and the messages of mediumship. And because I was working with numbers, and I also really liked my left brain to feed its logical side, so I wanted to take some classes and learn more about mediumship and how this worked and what it meant, and I needed to understand the full thing, so I love taking classes. And I decided to quit my job and to do this full time. And shortly after that, I kept hearing to go to Arthur Finley. And I was a little reluctant because my daughter had moved to Europe, and I had just visited her, and it was just back maybe 3 or 4 months, but I heard it was really important. So I went, and Arthur Finley College is, they have teachers from all over the world, and there's only one from the United States. It's a former nun, or I think she is a nun yet, Janet Nahovic, and she's in New Jersey. And she's the only one from the United States that teaches there. But so they have quite a just a really wonderful, wonderful staff. And so I was there for a week, and I thought I knew which instructor I was going to be with for mediumship. But once I got there, I actually ended up taking a trance course. And through the trance course, I did a lot more channeling with both Archangel Gabriel and St. Francis and others. And during that week, all the animals came in. And so as they came in for me, I was the first one to channel, the first one to talk to animals. And I kind of started something. Then pretty soon, half that class was into animal communication and channeling messages. So it was really fun. I guess we were all meant to be there. Yeah, that was a really, really special time in my life. I hope to go back one day.
Well, I hope so, too, and I bet you're looking forward to it. You write a monthly column for the New Spirit Journal. Could you tell us a little about that?
Yes. The angels tell me to open your arms wide and to ask or to receive. And every time I do that, something comes. And they just told me, like this past week, that we're a team, that we support you. You are doing all the things that we ask you to do. You've never disappointed us, and we're always there for you. You can always trust us. And that's important for me to hear those messages, because sometimes you wonder about things that come up, and I say, oh, no, this is a little scary, that I'll jump in and do it anyway because I agreed to. So this is how New Spirit Journal came to me. I just got a call one day, and they asked me if I'd like to write a column. And I said, yes, definitely. And then, as Wendy knows, I went, oh, my God, I haven't written anything for a while, but I guess I'm supposed to do this. But it's been great fun, and it's really stretching me a little bit. But the main purpose is why I agreed was it's an opportunity to let people know who the animals are and to share the stories. I wrote about the goose, and I wrote about my cat Sammy, and I wrote about how to communicate with animals. So it's been really a great platform, and I look forward to doing more writing in the future.
It sounds fantastic. You have studied with Polly Klein, Jacqueline Smith, Marta Williams. Tell us a little about them and what it was like studying with them.
Well, the first one I studied with was Polly Klein, and she's here in Seattle. And we just jumped in, and it proved right from the get-go that anyone can do this at any time. We sat down, there was an introduction by Polly Klein, and then she said, exchange pictures, tell this person what your first impressions are of their animal. And we went forward from there. We would take pictures out of the circle and do readings and exchange pass that information on to the owner. And everyone did it. We had probably 30 to 40 people in the class. There wasn't anyone that couldn't do this. And the second day, they brought animals in, and one of the most fun things for me was meeting George, an iguana. He was about, maybe 3 feet long, 3.5 feet long. And as I walked into class that second day, I was looking at all the birds and the cats and the dog, and everyone lined up against the wall, and I almost stepped on George. So I felt fear, like, oh. I put my things down and went over to him, and I apologized. I said, I'm really sorry, but I'm a little afraid of reptiles. And he said, most people are. That's why I'm here. And that weekend, George was being he was being cuddled in a baby blanket by the behaviorist, and she had him over shoulder, this green iguana with the big tail hanging down past her waist. And he just loved to be held and cuddled. And one of our exercises with George was to ask him the things that he liked to do. And we all got the same answers. He told us that he loved to watch TV, and especially high-speed car races and police chases. But he also liked the Golden Girl, Golden Girls in rows. Yeah, and the behaviorist said, well, my husband watches the first, and I like the Golden Girls, and yes, he does enjoy those. And George also liked to walk down the street with a collar and a leash because it made he made a big commotion in the neighborhood, and he really liked that attention. Yeah, so that was really fun with Holly Klein, and it was a great building block and platform to jump off. And Jacqueline Smith, I was told about Jacqueline. She's in Ohio, and she's been doing this for, probably 30 years. And so the first was practical application, and Jacqueline was a lot about who animals are spiritually and her own journey and how you can communicate with all beings and anything on the earth, anything that's living has a consciousness. And so we worked remotely with phone sessions with our training. And that was a really significant piece because her philosophies and beliefs really spoke to me. And so I really enjoyed working with her. And then every so often we check in, and I went out to do, I think I offered like 10, 12 readings to a group that I'm in. And then I would talk to her about maybe one or two things that I had a question on. So it was good to have her as a mentor also. And she was the second person I worked with. She has a whole host of services and does everything from soul retrievals and healing and so forth. And she has several books and CDs also. And then I worked with Marta Williams this past year, and she has a lot of books out. She's in California, and she has a property with horses, and she offers lots of workshops and weekly sessions and online sessions. And I really enjoy Marta because she was a biologist, and so it really comes from a science approach. And that spoke to me also. So she's really down to earth and practical, and I really like that about her. And she's about, verifying your information and going deeper and looking at specific issues like how the animals mirror us and looking at their perceptions and specific areas of people, behaviors and death and dying, and talk about everything. And she's got an online Facebook group also for communicators. So there's kind of continuing education through Marta.
Wow.
So each one has been really a nice, really well-rounded for me.